Day is December 25th. It is Christmas Day, and we are talking about the secret of the virgin birth and the real teachings of Jesus Christ. Christ's message has been twisted by Christian fundamentalism and has become a false light in the world. So today is a great time to be able to take a look at the true message of Christ, what it really means, and take a look at the secret of the virgin birth and explore what that really means, its hidden message that's embedded within it. It's going to be really good. And if you're watching a replay, hey, it doesn't matter if you're watching this on Christmas or not. This is extremely interesting information that you are going to want to see or going to want to hear. It's completely different than the fundamentalist interpretation that most people have been given. So that's what we're doing right now. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. It's going to be good. We're going to get started right away, but first, make sure that you like and subscribe. Hey, this channel is about raising consciousness and reaching minds. It's not just about making entertaining videos. It's about doing good work to help people reach a new level of consciousness. So help us out. Hit like, hit subscribe. That tells the algorithm to spread this around and it reaches more people. Also, if you want to see this channel grow, if you want to support my channel, help me create bigger and better videos, support over on patreon.com. That's the best way to support my work. It's patreon.com/MorgueOfficial. And you'll get access to all of our members only videos. And there's a new members only video every single week. So it's going to be good. You'll enjoy that. And also you can support on YouTube as well. If you hit the join button below YouTube, tier 2 or higher will also get you access to all that. And I appreciate it very much. Also, hey, be on the lookout. There are a lot of scammers. I see more and more every day, every week, whatever. There's a lot of scammers out there. And they're pretending to be me. They're DMing people and commenting and saying to join my WhatsApp and join my Telegram. I'll never do that. I don't have a WhatsApp or a Telegram. So that's not me. Don't fall for it. Also, there are people and groups out there who don't like what we're doing, who don't like what I'm doing, and they are spreading a lot of misinformation and disinformation about me and our group and what we do. So, hey, just use your head, use logic and reason, and don't fall for the BS. All right, here we go, my friends. On December 25th, Christmas Day, we are going to be exploring the secret of the virgin birth and, of course, the real message of Christ as well. It's a very important time to do so. Now, I want to mention right away before we get started that December 25th is not Christ's actual birthday. And it kind of surprises me to know that a lot of people don't know that, but that's fine. But I want to point that out for people who might be unaware. December 25th is not Christ's birthday. It's not said anywhere in the Bible the date when Jesus is born. This was a day that was just selected to celebrate his birth. And it's very likely that this day was selected to overshadow or replace pagan holidays like perhaps Saturnalia or Sol Invictus, which was around the same time. And essentially it was most likely to replace these pagan holidays. So just throwing that out there, it's important to understand December 25th, not actually Christ's birthday. It likely has pagan roots in, like I said, Saturnalia or Sol Invictus. But the important thing to understand here is that Christ is a symbol. Christ is an archetype and has said many different things. We have records of Christ saying many different things. And what we're going to do is, like I said, we're going to take a look at the secret of the virgin birth and see what the virgin birth actually means, interpret the hidden meaning behind that. But before we do, I want to jump into the fact that, like I said, Christ's message has been completely twisted and turned around. For those who don't know, I grew up in a strict Christian household. And when I left Christianity, I hated Jesus. But I realized later, through studying Gnostic Gospels and different interpretations, that the fundamentalist version of Christ was just one interpretation. And there is a much more powerful interpretation of Christ, which shows Christ as not someone that is a savior that you need to be enslaved to as a subject or have to worship to atone for your sins, but rather as someone who brings knowledge. That's it. Knowledge to show that you are God and that you can understand this when you look within. And it's very interesting to know. We're going to take a look here at first. The first thing that we're going to look at is actually in the Bible itself. All right. So we're going to actually look at the Gospel of John. And the Gospel of John is a very interesting gospel. I'm going to do some videos on the Gospel of John at some point, but we're going to get a little preview of that today because the Gospel of John, actually some people think that it has Gnostic influences. Now, that's probably not true, but it is themed very differently than the other Gospels, and maybe even if it wasn't directly influenced by the movement today that we consider to be Gnosticism, it has very Gnostic themes. So consider this verse in John 8:19. It says, "They said to him, therefore, where is your Father?" Jesus answered, "You know neither me nor my Father. If you knew me, you would know my Father also." And this is very interesting, has a lot of parallels to Gnosticism, because in Gnosticism, Jesus Christ is constantly saying, my Father is basically a God that you don't know about, a higher God, not the God of what would become the Old Testament, not Jehovah, not Yahweh. The God that Jesus comes from is the One, the great invisible Spirit, the mind of divine light. And Christ is essentially saying that you don't know my Father. If you knew me, you would know my Father. Now in John, in the Gospel of John, we see something very similar to that, where it says, they said to him, where is your Father? And Jesus answered, you know neither me nor my Father. If you knew me, you would know my Father also. So a very interesting Gnostic reflection there. And in John 8:23, it says, he said to them, you are from below, I am from above. You are of this world, I am not of this world. And continuing in John 8:34, he says, I speak of what I have seen with my Father, and you do what you have heard from your father. You see, once again, I speak from what I have seen from my Father, and you do what you have heard from your father. And the Gospel of John is a very interesting gospel. Like I said, very reflective of Gnostic themes, where Christ comes from a different God, the One, not the Son of God as the God of the Old Testament, or what would become the Old Testament. And in John 8:43, Jesus says, why do you not understand what I say? It is because you cannot bear to hear my word. And then in the very next verse, you are of your father, the devil, and your will is to do your father's desires. He was a murderer from the beginning and does not stand in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he lies, he speaks out of his own character, for he is a liar and the father of lies. So now in this verse, he's outright saying that their father is the devil. And in John 8:47, Jesus says, whoever is of God hears the words of God. The reason why you do not hear them is that you are not of God. Now, of course, there's a fundamentalist Christian way that this could be interpreted. In fundamentalist Christianity, it would simply be like, oh, well, Jesus is saying that their God is the devil, and that Jesus is actually the Son of the Old Testament God, and that they simply don't actually know the Old Testament God, Jehovah or Yahweh. They don't actually, Jesus is like saying that they're not actually understanding the true message of God or whatever. But you can see that it does have very Gnostic themes, and we see this continued, and there's just a lot in John. In John 10, it says, again, the Jewish opposition picked up stones in order to stone him. So they were about to kill Jesus. And for those who don't know what stoning is, this is when they would pick up stones and smack you with stones. They throw stones at you. A ton of people would gather around, and they would all throw stones at you until you were no longer living. I'm choosing my words carefully here on YouTube. Until you were no longer living. And when I say they're picking up stones, I'm not talking about little pebbles here. We're talking big boulders, something you'd need two hands to lift, and everyone would throw these at you until you would die. So it says here, they picked up stones. They were picking them up. They were getting ready to unalive him. And Jesus responded and says, I have shown you many good works from the Father. For which of those do you stone me? So I'm doing good things here. Why are you trying to do this to me? And they said, we don't stone you for doing good works, but for insulting God. You are human, yet you make yourself out to be God. Okay, so see, here's the interesting thing to see and know, that right here we have the opposition ready to unalive Jesus because Jesus is claiming to be God. Now, what does Jesus say? Jesus says, isn't it written in your law, I have said you are gods? Scripture calls those to whom God's word came gods, and scriptures can't be abolished. So how do you say that the one whom the Father has made holy and sent into the world insults God because he said, I am God's son? So you again have this theme of the Son of God, but also saying you are gods. Essentially, those who have understanding are gods. And this is extremely reflective of the role that is given to Lucifer in the Garden of Eden, when Lucifer says, when you eat from the tree of knowledge, you will become like God. So we know that there's the serpent in the Garden of Eden, and the serpent says to Eve, hey, if you eat from the tree, you're not going to die. God told them that they would die, but what you'll do is that you will actually become like God, knowing good from evil, when you eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And there actually exists a secret book of John, and the secret book of John is a Gnostic text. The secret book of John is a banned Gnostic text. And in this banned Gnostic text, in the secret book of John, it's about Jesus Christ revealing information to John. And all this information is essentially about how the God of the Bible, what would become the Bible didn't exist at that time, but you know what I mean. What would be the Old Testament God is actually an evil being, that Christ actually comes from the realm of divine light and the one and the true God of eternal mind. And Jesus reveals that he was the one in the Garden of Eden that caused Eve to eat. It says, quote, as for the tree called the knowledge of good and evil, I caused them to eat. And that is Jesus Christ speaking. And I'm just, pointing out the very interesting parallels, not even in banned texts, but in the Gospels themselves, particularly the Gospel of John. The Gospel of John has a lot of Gnostic themes, and we are going to explore them in more detail later. Just even in John 1, it says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. Through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made. In him was life, and that life was the light of all mankind. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. Well, what's really interesting to note about this is that this has to do with the word logos. So they use the word, it says in the beginning was the Word, but in Greek this means logos. And logos means like word or reason. Logos can also be interpreted as reason. So in the beginning was the Word, or in the beginning was the logos, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. So what this really means by saying word or logos or reason is that it was a structure. It was a form. Essentially, that in the beginning was this structure, and this structure was with God, and this structure was God. He was with God in the beginning, and through him all things were made. Without him nothing. And we hear about the logos all the time in Gnostic scripture. In the Gnostic scripture, the logos is sort of this ordering function that orders creation and is an emanation from God. So anyway, we'll talk about that more in the future. There's just a lot of very interesting themes in the Gospel of John that have a lot of correlation to Gnostic beliefs, which I think are really cool. I think it's really cool that you don't even have to go outside the Bible to find these really interesting ideas put forth by Jesus. And again, in the Bible too, in the Bible, it says the kingdom of heaven is not around you. The kingdom of heaven is within. It says that in the Bible. The kingdom of heaven is not outside of you. It is inside of you. And That is elaborated on in another Gnostic text, the Gospel of Thomas, which we'll talk about in just a minute. But before we move on to these Gnostic texts, and we haven't even gotten to the secret of the virgin birth. This is what we're going to really be leading up to here, is the secret of the virgin birth and what the virgin birth really means. But it's important to understand, we're talking about where Jesus came from. Jesus came from the realm of divine light. Jesus came from the One, according to Gnosticism. And this is going to be important for understanding the meaning of the virgin birth, because the virgin birth has to do with where Jesus came from. But where did Jesus come from originally? Well, we're talking about the realm of divine light, and then the virgin birth, we're going to see, has to do with that divine origin, and we're going to be talking about that in just a minute. But a couple things I just want to mention real quick here. I already made the connection between Jesus Christ and Lucifer with regard to bringing knowledge to humanity, but there's something I want to throw out to you right now in case anyone didn't know this. The name Lucifer does not appear anywhere in the Bible. This was kind of a later invention that really started gaining popularity in the medieval times, where you can actually find Lucifer, the word or name Lucifer, only once in the King James Version of the Bible. But other modern English interpretations of the Bible have taken that out. Why? Because it stems from a mistranslation, or rather a misinterpretation. So the only verse, all right, the only verse that has the word Lucifer in it is in Isaiah 14:12, where it says, "How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, who didst weaken the nations?" All right, so what are they talking about here? Well, there's a couple things to note about this. For one thing, in Isaiah, they're talking about a Babylonian king. They're not talking about an angel or a deity or a supernatural being of any kind. This verse refers to a Babylonian king who is fallen from grace and has lost power. And so they are saying, "How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, who didst weaken the nations?" Well, it's like, okay, wait a minute. What do you mean? But fallen from heaven and Lucifer, but here's the thing, is that Lucifer isn't even really a name. What Lucifer is a reference to the planet Venus when it appears in the daytime. So the planet Venus is called the morning star and the evening star, because you can see the planet Venus right before sunrise and right after sundown. So the planet Venus is known as the morning star and the evening star. And Lucifer is the word that refers to the planet Venus in its morning state, when you see it before sunrise. So Lucifer is the word for the planet Venus, meaning morning star or day star. So having Lucifer as a name of an entity was a misinterpretation that really sparked, wild stories and narratives to be written about it. But if you look closer at it, you'll see that it's just referencing the day star. And this is revealed in almost all modern translations of the Bible have changed that, because they're like, oh, that was wrong. And so a modern translation will say, "How art thou fallen from heaven, O day star, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, that didst lowly the nations?" So when it's saying, "How art thou fallen from heaven, O day star, son of the morning," it's talking about a star that has lost its way, and a metaphorical insult to a fallen Babylonian king. It's not about a being called Lucifer falling from heaven. So it's really important to understand, Lucifer appears nowhere in the Bible, only once in the King James Version and maybe a couple of other versions, but not many, and it's because of a misinterpretation. And what's really interesting to know about this, if we fast forward to Revelation, okay, what does Revelation say? Listen to this. Revelation says, "I, Jesus, have sent my angel to give you this testimony for the churches. I am the root and the offspring of David and the bright morning star." So Revelation 22:16 basically says, "I, Jesus, am the bright morning star." And this would be the same word if it were translated like it was translated in Isaiah. it would be saying, I, Jesus, am Lucifer. But of course, that would be a very blasphemous translation nowadays and a misinterpretation, because it's not referring to a being. It is referring to the planet Venus during the day, the morning star. So, that's just an interesting to note here, all these connections, but specifically it's that Lucifer is a modern narrative, or, well, it depends what you determine mod. It really developed in medieval times into what it is today. It's not found in the Bible. You'll be surprised that a lot of the stuff in fundamentalist Christianity is just made up. It's just, the whole thing is made up, but they go very far into just completely veering outside of what's even in the Bible. But I want to continue real quick because, like I said, today I want to get into the secret of the virgin birth and what that really means. But before we do that, I want to talk a little bit about some of my favorite teachings of Christ in the Gospel of Thomas. Now, the Gospel of Thomas is another banned gospel, and it is a very old gospel. Some people, it's hard to tell the dates of these things, but according to some scholars, it could be the oldest gospel. Now, that's not known for sure, but it's possible that the Gospel of Thomas could be the oldest gospel. And it's banned by the church. It's a Gnostic gospel. It's considered a Gnostic gospel now. But in this book, it's all about empowerment. It's all about how you and we are divine, and we come to our divinity through understanding and through knowledge. Not about the sin and salvation and having to worship, but rather about understanding what we really are as beings of light, coming from the Father, the one, the realm of light. And this is important. Like I said, we're talking about the secret of the virgin birth. It's important to know origins here because it has to do with origins. So in the Gospel of Thomas, I just want to read to you a couple of my favorites here because I think it's a really good thing to do on Christmas Day to highlight the empowering messages of Christ rather than the disempowering messages propagated by the church. It's really important to transform their darkness into light as it was always meant to be. So in the Gospel of Thomas, right, it starts out, the very first line in the Gospel of Thomas says, "These are the hidden sayings that the living Jesus spoke." And he said, "Whoever finds the correct interpretation of these sayings will never die." And Jesus said, "The seeker should not stop until he finds. When he does find, he will be disturbed. After having been disturbed, he will be astonished. Then he will reign over everything. And having reigned, he will rest." And one of the things that I want to mention here is essentially what this is about, and we'll see in a minute, is about self-understanding and unlocking the secret that lies within. But when it says when one understands this person will be disturbed. Then after they're disturbed, they will be amazed, and then they will rule over everything, or they will rule over the all. Well, what is that but apotheosis? To rule over everything, to rule over it all, that is divinity, that is godhood. So this is essentially is that when you understand these secrets, you're going to be astonished, you're going to be disturbed, you're going to be amazed, and you will rule over everything. Then you will rest. You get a break, but you will rule over all. And this is about the understanding of what oneself is and what reality is and what existence is. And if anyone has gone through a consciousness awakening, you'll probably relate to some of these steps, or you may be going through some of them. You may be disturbed, like, oh, wow, I thought that reality was one way. It's actually a completely different way. I went through this stage many times in my life. I started off in a strict religious household. Then I moved over to scientific materialism, and then I realized that was false and moved over to a more psychedelic dualism, and then realized that was false, and then moved over to a understanding of reality being a mental reality. And through all of these paradigm shifts, there was disturbing moments of being disturbed and moments of being astonished. You're disturbed, and this is why you have this stage of first being disturbed, then being astonished. You are disturbed because your old model of reality has been destroyed. Everything that you have used to interpret the data around you has been rendered useless. And so you become disturbed. Wait a minute, I thought X was true. X isn't true. So what is true, I have no paradigm, I have no reality tunnel on which to base my existence and interpret what is going on around me right now. And so this brings in the feeling of being disturbed. But then, of course, when one starts to begin to realize what existence is, one is amazed, one is astonished. That feeling of being disturbed leads to astonishment. And then if one really and truly understands what they are and what we are and what everything is, they will reign over everything, because you will realize that we are all God coming to self-knowledge. And this is a constant theme in the Gospel of Thomas, which is a fantastic gospel, a beautiful gospel, one of my favorites. And it says here, Jesus said, if your leaders say to you, you know what? Well, I've read this one a lot, but I'll read it again. Remember how I said in the in the Bible, it says the kingdom of heaven is not outside of you, it's within you. Well, it's really elaborated in the Gospel of Thomas, where it says, Jesus says, if your leaders say to you, look, the kingdom is in the sky, then the birds will be there before you. If they say the kingdom is in the sea, then the fish will be there before you. Rather, the kingdom is within you, and it is outside of you. So basically, Jesus is saying, hey, it's not in the sky, it's not in the sea, and if any leaders tell you that that's true, they're liars. The kingdom is within you, and it's outside of you. Meaning, the kingdom of heaven is not a place that you go to, it's a level of consciousness and something that we can manifest or create right here and right now all around us. And that's what we're all about in the Neogenian system, creating a new beginning, creating a new humanity, a new earth. How? A new consciousness. We are the second coming of Christ, here to create the kingdom of heaven on earth right now. And this isn't like some ego thing like, oh, well, no, it's just about the fact that we are a collective consciousness that is awakening and want others to awaken to their godhood and their divinity, so we can create a world of prosperity, growth, and quality, and increased quality of life for all. And we can do that. We have that power. That is what we are here to do. That is literally why we are here. That is literally why we are here. We are here to enjoy life and create a better life. That is the meaning of life. Enjoy it and create a better one. And this includes, of course, increasing knowledge, because with knowledge, one can create a higher quality of life. But one must not just have knowledge, but wisdom as well, how to apply that knowledge in such a way that it leads to an increase in quality of life. So while everyone is running around slaughtering each other, murdering each other, and taking each other's rights away, which is absolute madhouse, I just can't even grasp or wrap my mind around how insane humanity is. It is just utterly mind-blowing how we can live in a world with technology that allows me to live stream and talk to you almost instantaneously, and all these developments that we have, and yet people are running around slaughtering each other for the most ridiculous of reasons. It's beyond belief. But anyway, we have the power to change that. We have the power to bring the kingdom of heaven to earth, create it right here, right now. It's not even about bringing it to earth. It is here. We just have to actualize it, manifest it, take what is potential into actuality, and that entails raising our consciousness, reaching a new level of consciousness right here and right now. I don't want to get too far off, though. You know, I want to get to talking about the virgin birth, and I know that I tend to get excited about these things and then talk about tangents for a while. So let's move on and continue. And it says, I just want to read some of my favorites here. I think it's a good day to do this. And Jesus continues by saying, when you understand yourselves, you will be understood, and you will realize that you are sons of the living Father. If you do not know yourselves, then you exist in poverty, and you are that poverty. And again, this isn't a literal poverty. This is a poverty of the soul, a poverty of the mind. In other words, ignorance. Jesus is saying, when you understand yourselves, you will realize that you are sons of the living Father. Now, how much more clear can you get than that? When Jesus says, I am the Son of God, or Son of the Father, and he says, when you understand yourselves, you will realize that you are the sons of the living Father. How it got turned into that we need to worship Jesus because we are dirty, flawed sinners is completely contrary to a Gnostic interpretation of self-knowledge that is exemplified in the Gospel of Thomas, where being like Jesus doesn't mean to follow all these lists of right and wrongs, where being like Jesus means to become God. And Christ continues by saying, he who has ears, let him hear. There is light within a man of light, and he lights up all the world. If he is not a light, there is darkness. And Jesus said, if they ask you, where are you from? Reply to them, we have come from the place where light is produced from itself. It came and revealed itself in their image. So where do we come from? We are, first of all, by knowing ourselves, we realize that we are the sons of the living Father. And I don't like this, gendered language. It doesn't have to be sons. It doesn't have to be father. This is just how it was said back then. But when you understand what you are, you realize that you are an emanation of the divine light, the light that is self-generating and from which all reality emanates and is an image of. We have come from the place where light is produced from itself and revealed itself in their image. That is where we are from. That is what Jesus says to reply to people when they say, where are you from? We are from the realm where light is produced from itself and revealed itself in this image. And if they ask you, are you it? Reply to them, right. Look, if they ask you, are you it? Reply to them, we are his sons. We are the chosen ones of the living Father. So once again, you can't get more direct than this, where the essence is self-understanding to apotheosis and godhood. And this is why in the beginning of the book, it says, if you understand the message in this book, you will be disturbed and astonished and then reign over everything, because you will realize that you are everything. We are all emanations of the divine one, according to Gnosticism. Our interpretation is slightly different in the Neogenian system, but very similar. We are all individual minds that form a singular network mind. So we are even more related to God in that way, because we're not just emanations, but rather we are nodes that form the structure itself. It's very close, and I don't want to get distracted again, but very, very similar. Now, it says, therefore, I say that if one of you is unified, he will be filled with light. But if one is divided, one will be filled with darkness. Again, emphasizing the necessity of being unified, being balanced. We talked about that a lot when we talked about the Gnostic ritual of the bridal chamber. And then, of course, Christ says, recognize what is right in front of you, and that which is hidden from you will be revealed to you. And I love that, because this book is so blatant. It's right in your face. He said, realize what's right in front of you. And that which is hidden from you will be revealed to you. Everything you're looking for, everything, this book just says it over and over again. Everything you're looking for is inside you and all around you. It's right in front of you and it's in your head. Look inside, realize what's right in front of you, and you will have all the secrets of existence. And this has been said over and over again in all the different mystery schools, all the different esoteric religions, all the different systems. It's just know thyself, know thyself, know thyself, know thyself. And it's very frustrating because humanity just refuses to do that. There's like, well, what? No, you mean worship God? You mean, believe in 5-dimensional ascended masters that will guide me to? No, stop it. Stop it. Know thyself. Look within. And what a fantastic world we will have when we all begin to look within, and then manifest what is internal, external. Create, form this world into whatever we so will. Our will be done. So let's talk a little bit now, all right? Because I don't want to get. I've already diverged quite a lot because I get excited about these things, but hey, it's a good day to talk about them. But let's talk about the virgin birth, okay? Let's talk about the secret of the virgin birth here. So, the typical story that Jesus was conceived from a virgin. Well, what does this mean? What is really being discussed here? So if we take a look at Gnosticism, particularly in the Testimony of Truth, which is really good. I did a whole video on the Testimony of Truth. Check out my playlist on that. In the Testimony of Truth, it says, John was begotten by the world through a woman. And for those who don't know, if you're not familiar with the Gospels that much, John the Baptist basically was the one who came before Jesus and was preaching about the coming of Jesus. So John the Baptist is an important figure in Christianity, basically like someone who paved the way for the coming of Christ. He was teaching people, doing good things, and he baptized Jesus. John the Baptist baptized Jesus. So they're saying John was begotten by the world through a woman. And Christ was begotten by the world through a virgin. What is the meaning of this mystery? John was begotten by means of a womb worn with age, but Christ passed through a virgin's womb. When she had conceived, she gave birth to the Savior. And what's important to understand about this is when we're looking at these Gnostic texts, what they're saying is, look beyond the literal interpretation. This is why it says here, what is the meaning of this mystery? And when we're talking about mysteries here, this is why things were called like mystery schools. What is the meaning behind this story? What is the meaning behind these words? It's not just about, a literal, they're saying, what does this mean? What does this represent? Okay? And if we turn to the Testimony of Truth, right prior to where it says this, okay, prior to where it says this that I just read to you, the Testimony of Truth says, and he gave command to himself. He began to know himself and to speak with his mind, which is the Father of the truth, concerning the unbegotten eons, and concerning the virgin who brought forth the light. So, within Gnosticism, the concept of virgin is extremely powerful, and it's an extremely important symbol. So, in Gnosticism, the One, the Father of all, the great invisible Spirit, is also sometimes known as the Virgin Spirit. And so, from the Father, the first emanation is the Mother, and the third emanation is the Son. So in Gnosticism, the Father represents mind, essentially. The Mother represents thinking, essentially. And the Son, through the union of the Father and the Mother, represent self-thinking thought or awareness. So you have thought, you have thinking, and then you have thought thinking about itself. You have this trinity. The Father is thought, the Mother is thinking, and this Son as thought that thinks about itself, self-reflective thought. The reason that the Father is called a virgin, and all of these essentially are as well, right? Because even the Mother, as the first emanation of the Father, sometimes it's called the Great Mother Father. And the Mother is described as androgynous, and the Father is described as androgynous as well. So it's the Great Mother Father. The Mother is the first emanation of the Father, but it's still an androgynous being. It's essentially, these are concepts. These are higher than any sort of ideas of gender that we have. It's just they're using words to try and describe this idea that's at the very bounds of thought. But why is it called the Virgin? The reason why that it is called the Virgin is because a virgin, because the Father is a creative force, as is the Mother. Everything comes forth from the Father and the Mother. The Father is that which is there in the beginning, and the Mother is the first emanation, and then the Son is another emanation. So you have first the Father, second the Son, second the Mother, and third the Son. And the reason why it's called a virgin is because this creative power requires nothing external to it in order for it to create. That is what virgin means in terms of Gnosticism when applied here. And this is why the God of all things is called a virgin because it creates and gives birth, but it does so without any external faculties needed. It's not like, oh, there's the Father that exists here, and then there is some other being that exists over here, and they consummate and create. No, rather, it's the Father that from itself gives birth to different transformations and emanations all contained within it. So virgin means, in this context here, the ability of the one principle of existence to be able to create from itself without anything external from it. So when we take a look at the fact that it says that Jesus was born of a virgin, where we look at the testimony of truth, Jesus was begotten, or John was begotten by the world through a woman, and Christ was begotten by the world through a virgin. What is the meaning of this mystery? John was begotten by means of a womb worn with age, but Christ passed through a virgin's womb. When she had conceived, she gave birth to the Savior. So a very big possibility when, Gnosticism is saying, what is the meaning of this mystery? What is the hidden message here? It's very possible that this could be speaking about Christ's emanation from the One, the great invisible Spirit, because it says here, right before it says, and he gave command to himself and began to know himself, and concerning the virgin who brought forth the light. So Christ literally came from the virgin who brought forth the light before he became a material, localized or incarnated, or however, whatever narrative that you're applying here. Before that occurred, according to Gnosticism, Christ was an emanation of the Virgin. From the Father and the Mother to the Son, Christ was an emanation from the Virgin, from which all light came and all light was produced. And when you look at all these stories, like the virgin birth of Mary and things like that, these are all metaphors. These are all, all the miracles of Jesus Christ, things like that. Jesus didn't do any of those things. Jesus didn't raise people from the dead and feed people with loaves and fishes and turn water into wine and all that. All of those things are metaphors and parables and stories and narratives that aren't supposed to be taken literally, but to be understood figuratively and symbolically and archetypally. And the same thing goes with the virgin birth. Jesus Christ wasn't literally born of a virgin. That's not possible. Jesus Christ, this is a symbol for something. And what is that symbol? One possible interpretation is that is a symbol of Christ being an emanation from the great virgin, the great invisible Spirit, the creator of all things that requires nothing outside of itself. And Christ is an emanation of that light, where it says, the virgin who brought forth the light. And one thing that I want to point out here, right, when we talk about Jesus Christ and we talk about these stories that we're reading, and when we talk about the, sorry, I'm just looking at my microphone, making sure it's still on. When we talk about these stories, we need to remember that we don't know for sure what Jesus said and what Jesus didn't say. We don't know. All right, that's the bottom line. We don't know. And so what we need to do is just look at these different texts that we have and interpret it for ourselves. Do we want to interpret it in an empowering way that shows that we are divine and are able to create the kingdom of heaven right here and now? Or do we want to interpret it in a fundamentalist way, which says we are weak, dirty, sinful, and flawed and have to worship a God in the sky who destroys humanity on a whim and slaughters innocent children and tortures people and accepts virgin sacrifices and on and on and on and on and on. So it's about understanding that Jesus Christ likely did exist. Jesus Christ was likely a person. I believe, so my belief is that Jesus Christ was an individual who really existed, and that he was a very enlightened individual who attained a high degree of consciousness and wanted people to understand what they are by looking inside and realizing the light that they have within. That is what I believe. And I believe that the church took that message and twisted it. But the bottom line is, we don't know. We don't know what Jesus Christ actually said or didn't. What Jesus Christ has become is an archetype, a symbol. Jesus Christ is an archetype. Jesus Christ is a symbol. And that symbol and that archetype can be interpreted and used in different ways. And it can be used and interpreted in a very negative way, as done by the fundamentalist interpretation that the church has propagated, or it can be done so in a positive way, in an empowering way, in an enriching way that allows us to look inside, actualize our potential, become better people, and live a life of love, reason, and empowerment. So when we look at these ideas, it's always critical to remember, right? I see people arguing all the time about, oh, well, this gospel isn't right because it was written at this time, and this story isn't true because that person wouldn't have been around to blah. None of these things happened. These are all stories. These are all, God didn't create the world in 6 days. The Noah's Ark never happened. None of these things are real. These are all stories. Jesus wasn't born from a virgin. They have elements of truth to them. I believe Jesus Christ was someone who existed, and probably a lot of people that are written about in the Bible actually existed. But all the miracles, all the people who lived to Methuselah, whoever it was, I forget, who lived to be 900 years old, or all these crazy stuff, none of that happened. No, Jesus didn't multiply fishes and loaves and walk on water. None of that happened. All of these things are stories and metaphors. So it's really funny when I see people getting in the argument, arguing in the comments like, oh, well, the Gnostic story isn't true because, this and this and this didn't happen. It's just a story. It's like, all of it's just a story. So what we need to do is interpret that story in either a positive way or a negative way. It's up to us. These are archetypes that we give power to by interpreting one way or another. So when we look at these ideas, we have to remember that these are all archetypal stories. These are all symbolic narratives that represent underlying forces of reality and aren't meant to be taken literal. So when we look at them, we want to see if they empower us or not. And it's not about believing everything in these books. It's about taking and using those things that help us live a better life. It doesn't matter if Jesus said them, or the Buddha said it, or your next door neighbor, or an alien, or an angel. It doesn't matter who or what said it. What matters is what's being said and examining that on its own merit. And if it's empowering, if it's true, if it rings true, if it is rational, if it is reasonable, if it is contributing to creating a better world, then it's something to perhaps integrate. But we don't have to believe things just because Jesus said it, or just because the Buddha said it, or just because some ascended master said it, or a channeled being said this or that. It doesn't matter where it came from. It matters what the content is and what the message is. And that's what's important. When you look at these different gospels, when you look at the Bible versus Gnostic texts, it's not about which one's older, even though I mentioned the Gospel of Thomas is likely very old, just because that's often an argument that Christians raise. Doesn't matter which one's older, or how many copies of what we have, or which one was more popular, or which one was closer to a certain date. None of that matters, because none of this is real. What matters is looking at these stories and seeing which version of it is in alignment with actualizing your true self and leading to freedom and knowledge, rather than being one that leads you to bondage. All of these things are systems, and they can be systems of control and enslavement, or systems of empowerment. All of these religions, all philosophical systems, all these stories, all of these things are programs that you integrate into your mind, and they will either enslave you and keep you limited and constrained forever out of reach of a higher consciousness, or they can empower you and liberate you and give you the tools to reach higher knowledge and higher consciousness. So always remember that. It's not about, oh, well, what verse is older and who said what and who said this. None of that matters. What matters is looking at the underlying message and seeing what underlying message is rational and reasonable and helpful. Is it better to believe in a God that slaughters all the firstborn children of Egypt, wipes out everyone in the flood, accepts a burnt virgin sacrifice, tortures people? Is that the kind of story and narrative that you want to integrate into your life as God, as the fundamental being of all things? Or do you want to integrate the idea that we are all in this together? We are all emanations of the divine, here exploring itself together, and we are here to enjoy life and create a better life through knowledge and understanding and collective co-creation. So which one? It's up to you. It's up to you. And this isn't about believing what I say. It's not about believing what Jesus said. It's not about believing what anybody said. It's about thinking for yourself. Know thyself. Know thyself. This is what we should celebrate, is self-knowledge. And I think that's a good thing to celebrate on Christmas, when we understand Christ's teaching of self-knowledge and self-understanding. So these things, hey, these are my interpretations. These are how I interpret things. You might interpret them differently. The church certainly interprets them differently. They killed a lot of people based on their interpretation. So let me know what you think. Tell me in the comments. What do you think? What are your interpretations? What do you think about it? Thank you all so much for joining me here on Christmas Day. I appreciate it. And hey, if you want to check out my other videos, there's a lot of information on Gnosticism and everything that we've been talking about today. Go check them out. They're on my channel. Also, please like and subscribe so that we can get this information out there and spread it around. It helps out a lot. And if you want to see my channel grow and support my work, please do. I appreciate it. And support on patreon.com/MorgueOfficial. And you'll get access to all of our members-only videos, and there's a new members-only video every single week. Or you can get access to the same thing by joining here on YouTube at Tier 2 or higher. And remember, as always, this isn't church, so don't feel obligated to support monetarily. You don't have to. There are plenty of free ways you can support, like liking, subscribing, and sharing. I do want to shout out those who do support, though. It helps out a lot. It means a lot to me. And I appreciate it. So shout out to Renaissance Fairy, Cassidy, Angela, the Halloween Mom, DB, Enki, Nusalina, Paul Rogers III, Eric Fire, Massam, Christopher Smith, and everyone else. And there are a couple names I need to add to this, so bear with me while I do that. Thank you very much.